I will just share the poem with you once again. Okay, let us start the poem because I don't know whether anyone else would be coming, joining. So whoever will join, okay, of course, they're free to join. So now, let me look at this poem, and hope you can see the text. And let us read from here. This is from this particular portion which we were doing yesterday. So the wife of Bath was talking about this contrast between Mercury and Venus, Venus being the goddess of love, and Mercury standing for wisdom, thrift, and science. Venus for revel, squandering, and defiance. From here, their several natures govern their directions. One rises when the others in dejection. So, when Venus is in ascendance, when it is rising, then Mercury will be down, and vice versa, like that. So, someone who is prone to revel or entertainment will not, of course, be inclined towards gathering knowledge or wisdom. Uh, so Mercury is desolate when halted in Pisces, just where Venus is exalted. So in the zodiac sign of Pisces, Mercury is desolate, or it feels to be somewhat uh, kind of left out. And Venus is exalted, it is in the ascendants. When Venus falls, where Mercury is raised. So it is a kind of a relationship between them, where one is rising at the cost of the other. And women, therefore, never can be praised by learned men, old scribes who cannot do the works of Venus more than in my old shoe. So, old men, people who are old, generally knowledgeable people are old people. They have gathered a lot of knowledge, but they are very old, so they are not capable of being in the service of love, that is referred to here. So they are not capable, they are like old shoes, fit to be discarded. These in their dotage sit them down to frows and say that women break their marriage vows. So old men, what they are doing, they are criticizing the women and saying that they are not keeping to their marriage vows. Frows here means being untidy, being untidy in appearance. So dotage, that is old age. So they, in their old age, they are not capable of being in the service of love. So here, the wife of Bath is talking about this, the difference between Venus and Mercury. So either one is in the ascendancy at the cost of the other. Now, to my purpose, as I told you, look, here's how I got a beating for a book. So, the wife of Bath had told us that how her fifth husband, that is Johnny, had hit her on the ear. and as a result, uh, she had become deaf. Now, it was because of a book. She had mentioned that she had torn a page from this book, and she had also mentioned the, some of the stories that were there. Now she's going to relate the incident, what had happened. One evening, Johnny, glowering with ire, sat with his book and read it by the fire. Glowering with ire means anger. So he was reading this book about evil wives, the unfaithful and evil wives, and he was getting very much angry when he was reading it by the fire. And first he read of Eve, whose wickedness brought all mankind to sorrow and distress. So here, uh, the first story that is there in this book, of course, is of Eve, who is the first woman. And as you know that how Eve was tempted by Satan in the guise of a serpent, and that story is there in the Old Testament. And when you go up to your third semester, that is next semester, you will be having Paradise Lost by John Milton, book one, where uh, in Paradise Lost, John Milton has dealt with this story of the fall of man and how Eve was tempted by Satan to eat from of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And that was the reason why sorrow and distress came into the world. Root cause why Jesus Christ himself was slain and gave his blood to buy us back again. So Jesus Christ, he was the Son of God, and when Adam and Eve were uh, they were driven away by God from the Garden of Eden because they had eaten from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the Son of God, that is Jesus Christ, he decided to intervene for for mankind. And he said that I will sacrifice my life, I will come as a man, I will be born as a man, and I will sacrifice my life uh, in order to redeem mankind, buy us back again. So with his blood, he would uh, enable mankind to go back to the kingdom of heaven. So God will grant them this passage to heaven because of Christ's sacrifice. So this is the story of the Bible. I, there's the text where you expressly find that women brought the loss of all mankind. So that is the text where the story of Eve is written down, and I means yes. So you will find in no uncertain terms about this story how Eve was responsible for the fall of man. So this was the first story that Johnny was reading. He read me then how Samson, as he slept, was shorn of all his hair by her he kept, and by that treachery Samson lost his eyes. So this is the story of the Philistine leader Samson, and how was he was actually the leader, and his wife Delilah, uh, she was from the a rival camp, and when and Samson had flowing locks. He had very long hair, and his bodily strength was there in his hair. And one day when he was sleeping, uh, Delilah cut off all his hair, shorn of all his hair. Shorn means to be uh, devoid of, and by that treachery Samson lost his eyes. So Samson was captured by these people, and he was blinded by them. So this is the story of Samson and Delilah, and how Samson was betrayed by this woman. So the Philistine Delilah was actually a Philistine woman, and uh, she was Samson's wife. So that was a story that recounted the treachery of a wife. And then he read me, if I tell no lies, all about Hercules and Deianira. She tricked him into setting himself on fire. Deianira, or Deianira, as she is called in Greek. Now, you perhaps know about Hercules. Hercules was a great Greek hero, and he was uh, a person who had immense strength. And his wife, Deianira, she actually uh, did a very foolish thing, meaning when the centaur was dying, he sort of left his, shirt. He told Deianira that his blood would help her to get the love of her husband. And that was the reason why Deianira asked Hercules to put on that shirt, the blood-soaked shirt of this centaur, and he was poisoned because it was a poisonous blood, and Hercules was so much in pain that he put himself on fire. So that is another story of how a wife brought about the suffering of her husband. So all these stories relate the stories of actually they are the stories of the evil wives. He left out nothing of the miseries occasioned by his wives to Socrates. Xanthippe, Xanthippe poured a piss pot on his head. The silly man sat still as he were dead, wiping his head, but dared no more complain than say, ere thunder stops, down comes the rain. So Xanthippe was his wife, and you know about Socrates, of course, the great Greek scholar and the great Greek philosopher. So one day Socrates was conversing with his companions, sitting on the doorstep of his house, and his wife Xanthippe, she had called him quite a few times to come inside, but he had not heard her, perhaps, or he was ignoring her, perhaps. And Xanthippe was extremely angry at this, and she uh, poured this piss pot, that is a pot that held urine, so over his head, as she was extremely angry at his behavior. And the silly man, that is Socrates, could not complain, and he sat there drenched in the piss or the urine, and he could only wipe his head and say that after thunder, when thunder stops, that is when Xanthippe had ceased to complain, she had poured this urine on his head, the pot of urine, and that was compared to the rain. So after thunder comes rain. So he was a witty fellow, this person called Socrates, this philosopher. So these are the stories that is recounted. Next of Pasiphae, the queen of Crete, for a wickedness he thought that story sweet. Fie, say no more, it has a grisly sting. Her horrible lust, how could she do the thing? So this queen, Pasiphae, she actually gave birth to Minotaur, who was half man and half bull. So that was, of course, an unnatural act, the grisly story. And then he told of Clytemnestra's lechery, how she made her husband die by treachery. He read that story with a great devotion. So Clytemnestra was the son, sorry, I'm extremely sorry. She was, as you know, the wife of Agamemnon, who was the leader of the Greeks. You have read the Iliad, and how Agamemnon was leading the Greeks. And actually, this Agamemnon had sacrificed their daughter, Iphigenia, for Apollo on the altar of Apollo, and Clytemnestra could never forget this. And when Agamemnon had come back, in the meantime, she had uh, plotted with her lover Aegisthus, and she killed her husband Agamemnon. So that is the act of treachery, as it is called here, by Clytemnestra, who was the wife of Agamemnon. And Johnny read all these stories with a great, devotion. He read me what occasioned the commotion, what occasioned the commotion by which Amphiaraus lost his life. My husband had a legend about his wife, Eriphyle, who for a god in gold went to the Greeks in secret, and she told them where to find him, in what hiding place. At Thebes it was, he met with sorry grace. So it was a sad story when this woman called Eriphyle, because she had got some gold, she disclosed the hiding place of her husband, whose name was Amphiaraus. So all these stories were there in that fat book, which Johnny loved to read. Of Livia and Lucilia, then he read, and both, of course, had killed their husbands dead, the one for love, the other out of hate. So Livia prepared some poison for him late one evening, and she killed him out of spite, Lucilia out of lecherous delight. So it was different reasons. The reasons were different, but they killed their husbands, all right. For she, in order he might only think of her, prepared an aphrodisiac drink. So actually, this woman, Lucilia, did not want to kill her husband, but it was a kind of a mistake that she had committed. She had prepared a love potion, aphrodisiac, uh, for her husband, but he drank it and was dead before the morning. Such is the fate of husbands. It's a warning. So Johnny recounted all these stories of evil wives who had all killed their husbands, and they had been extremely uh, kind of evil minded women. And then he told how one Latumius lamented to his comrade Avius that in his orchard plot there grew a tree on which his wives had hanged themselves, all three, or so he said, out of some spite or other. To which this Arius replied, Dear brother, give me a cutting from that blessed tree, and planted in my garden it shall be. So there was also this story about these two men, Latumius, who was lamenting how in his house there was a tree, a fruit tree that is, and all his three wives had committed suicide by hanging themselves from the branches of the tree. And Arius, who was listening to this story, he said then that he would like to have a branch of that tree, because presumably he was very much bothered by his wife, and he wanted her to be dead. Of wives of later date, he also read how some had killed their husbands when in bed, then night long with their lechers played the whore, while the poor corpse lay fresh upon the floor. So again, the wickedness of the wives and how they had killed their husbands. So all these stories were there, and they all recounted the stories of uh, evil women. One drove a nail into her husband's brain while he was sleeping, and the man was slain. Others put poison in their husband's drink. He spoke more harm of us than heart can think, and knew more proverbs too, for what they are worth, than there are blades of grass upon the earth. So Alison here is saying that uh, in this book there were so many stories about evil women, evil wives, and it is really impossible to think how so many stories were there, and there were so many proverbs also, uh, and those proverbs about evil women, they were more in number than the blades of grass upon the earth. So this is a kind of an exaggeration, of course, as you can well understand. So that is this book. This is the book that Johnny was fond of reading. Better, says he, to share your habitation with lion, dragon, or abomination than with a woman given to reproof. So it is better to live with a lion, that is a ferocious beast like a lion, a mythical creature like a dragon, which is also very dangerous, or abomination that is being abused by someone, than with a woman who is always cankering, who is always scolding. Better, says he, take refuge on the roof than with an angry wife down in the house. So, an angry wife is really someone who cannot be tolerated. They are so wicked and cantankerous. They hate the things their husbands like, he would say. So, of course, the wives did not want their husbands to enjoy themselves. Uh, a woman always casts her shame away when she casts off her smock, and that's in haste. A pretty woman, if she isn't chaste, is like a golden ring in a sow's snout. So, a pretty woman, if she is a woman who is of a loose character, she would not be worth anything, because she would then become a golden ring in a sow's snout. That sow is a female pig. So it would be really useless, just as useless. She would be just as useless as a iron ring, sorry, a golden ring in a sow's snout. Who could imagine, who could figure out the torture in my heart? It reached the top, and when I saw that he would never stop reading this cursed book, all night no doubt, I suddenly grabbed and tore 3 pages out where he was reading at the very place, and fisted such a buffet in his face that backwards down into our fire he fell. So one night, uh, Alison could no longer uh, bear this, tolerate this. And she uh, did one very strange thing, that is, she tore 3 pages. So, how many pages did she tear out? 3 pages out of this book at the very place where he was reading. And he uh, fisted such a buffet in his place, means she really gave him a blow on the face. And as a result, Johnny fell backwards towards the fireplace. Then, like a maddened lion, with a yell, he started up and smote me on the head, and down I fell upon the floor for dead. So Johnny recovered immediately, and he uh, rose and was uh, crying out like a lion, like a maddened lion, and he smote Alison on the head, and that is why she turned deaf. This blow really stunned her, and when he saw how motionless I lay, he was aghast and would have fled away. But in the end, I started to come to. So when he saw that Alison was lying there almost as if she was dead, Johnny was extremely frightened, and he wanted to run away from the house. But in the end, he saw that she was coming to, meaning she was regaining consciousness. Oh, have you murdered me, you robber, you? to get my land, I said. Was that the game? Before I am dead, I'll kiss you all the same. So here, as you can see, Alison had a plan in her head, and she said that uh, you have murdered me. So you probably want to grab my land. That is why you want to kill me and take all my property. And but I will make amends with you by kissing you before I die. He came up close and kneeling gently down, he said, my love, my dearest Alison, so help me God, I never again will hit you, love, and if I did, you asked for it, forgive me. So he was very repentant. He was apologizing to Alison. But for all he was so meek, I up at once and smote him on the cheek and said, take that to level up the score. Now let me die. I can't speak anymore. But Alison then sat up and hit him on the cheek and said that now let me die. I do not have the energy to live anymore. We had a lot of trouble and heavy weather, but in the end, we made it up together. He gave the bridle over to my hand, gave me the government of house and land, of tongue and fist, indeed of all he had got. So what was the result of this fighting that they had? The result was that you will remember that in the beginning, when Alison was talking about her fifth husband, Johnny, she said that she had given everything to him, her money, her property, but she was repenting soon. But now she got back all her property and money and the mastery over him. So that was the kind of thing that happened. That was the result, a very good result for her, of tongue and fist. That is, she would scold him whenever she liked and beat him, fist, use her fist, indeed of all he had got. So he gave up his house and land, the landed property he possessed, and also the house. The bridle is, of course, the reins. The bridle is the reins which are put on a horse's nose, and the horse is controlled. So Alison became the controlling factor in the house. And when I had mastered him and out of deadlock secured myself the sovereignty in wedlock, and when he said, my own and truest wife, do as you please for all the rest of life. So Alison had wanted all this all the time, that she would be doing whatever she wanted to do. So ultimately, she got what she wanted. So she secured the sovereignty, that is the mastery, the liberty or the freedom in wedlock, in marriage. And Johnny was very meek, and he said that my truest wife, you can do whatever you want to do, but guard your honor and my good estate. So whatever you do, please be careful about it, preserving your honor and my good name. From that day forward, there was no debate. So no debate, that is no quarrel between them. There was a perfect understanding. So help me God, I was as kind to him as any wife from Denmark to the rim of India, and as true. So she's saying that from that day onwards, I was very kind to him. We did not have any kind of quarrel. And no, I was the best wife from Denmark to India. And he to me, so he was also very kind to me and very good to me. And I pray God that sits in majesty to bless his soul and fill it with his glory. Now if you will listen, I will tell my story. So the wife of Bath ends the prologue by saying that, thus I regained supremacy over my husband, over my house, and I regained my property back. And so this is the way that I have described to you how I got back everything. And I made a kind of a truce with my husband. So now I will tell you my story. So this is the prologue, where Alison is saying this, and there is a short portion, dialogue between the summoner and the friar. The friar laughed when he had heard all this. "Well, ma'am," he said, "as God may send me bliss, this is a long preamble to our tale." So the friar, he was amused at such a long preamble, where the wife of Bath was talking about, you know, about herself at length, how she was talking about her 5 husbands, how she had established control over them, and all the ways and means that she used, the trickery she used to have control over them. So he says that yes, this is really a very big preamble, long preamble. But when the summoner heard the friar rail, "Just look," he cried, "by the 2 arms of God. These meddling friars are always on the prod." So the summoner and the friar, they were at loggerheads. They did not get well, sort of did not see eye to eye, that is. They were not friends. And when the friar made this remark, the summoner said, "Look at this friar, he's railing, that is, he's ranting, he's speaking like a madman. So he is meddling in the affairs of others. Don't we all know a friar and a fly go prod and buzz in every dish and pie?" So he's saying that a friar and a a fly, would go and spoil everything. Uh, Next, what do you mean with your perambulation, preambulation? Amble yourself, trot, do a meditation. So, what is you want to say? And it is better for you to meditate. You are spoiling all our fun with your commotion. So the summoner was not at all happy at the comment that the friar made on the wife of Bath's uh, preamble. The friar smiled and said, "Is that your motion? I promise on my word before I go to find occasion for a tale or so about a summoner that will make us laugh." So the friar will tell a story about a summoner, which would be a very funny story. "Well, damn your eyes, and on my own behalf," the summoner answered, "mine be damned as well, if I can't think of several tales to tell about the friars that will make you mourn before we get as far as Sittingbourne. Have you no patience? Look, he's in a huff." So uh, the summoner retaliated by saying that, "Yes, I also can tell certain stories about friars which would really make one laugh." And so he's saying that, of course, before I go my way, I will uh, tell a story, rather number of stories, which will sort of put a friar in a kind of a negative light. And he is saying that before we get to Sittingbourne, so that is the name of a place on the way to Canterbury, I'll finish my tale. And he points at the friar and says he's in a huff. He's in a huff, meaning that the friar is actually offended. Huff means to be offended. So He was huffing under a heavy load of actually he was annoyed. So the friar, when he heard this, he was naturally not pleased. Our host called out, "Be quiet, that's enough. Shut up and let the woman tell her tale. You must be drunk. You have taken too much ale. Now, ma'am, you go ahead and no demur." So, the host, that is the innkeeper, Harry Bailey, now he asked them to shut up and not to quarrel now that the wife of Bath is going to begin her tale. So, this was the preamble or the prologue to her tale, but the tale is yet to come, and she is going to relate that, and there's no demur, so no one will object to your telling of the tale. "All right," she said, "it's just as you prefer, if I have license from this worthy friar." "Nothing," said he, "that I should more desire." So, uh, Alison says that if I have permission from the friar here, I will begin my tale. And the friar said, "Yes, I have nothing against you. I would like to listen to your tale." So, in this way, the finally we have come to the end of the prologue to the Wife of Bath's tale, and we do not have the Wife of Bath's tale. So, thank God, uh, we have read the prologue, and naturally, uh, you can understand that it is a poem where Chaucer is basically is talking about the a kind of a person, a woman who is very different from the general portrayal of medieval women. She is someone who is very self-confident, a kind of a overbearing, a bold woman, woman of the world who can stand her own ground. So I'll give you some study material uh, from this poem later on.